Hey there everyone, it's Nina. Thanks for joining me today for a new video. I love making edge-to-edge shaker cards, and I thought I would utilize some new products from Simon Says Stamps Just a Note release and create a really cool shaker card, but at the same time we're also going to talk about detailed ink blending of background dyes. I absolutely fell in love with the sunflower plate from the new release, and I thought it would be fun to color it with my ink blending supplies. So we're going to use some Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated inks and their blending brushes to color this in. I've already die cut this from some white cardstock. The cardstock I'm using is Simon Says Stamp 120 pound white cardstock. I do recommend using that cardstock with ink blending with their Positively Saturated inks because it works really well for that. It's a smooth cardstock that gives you really nice blending results. So once I carefully get all of the negative areas of this die cut removed from the paper, we're ready to start coloring. So I started first with my lightest shade of yellow and one of the detail round blending brushes. I'm going to color each of these sunflowers with this color. This happens to be lemonade, and this is going to give me a nice base for the sunflowers. Then I brought in citrine, which is a darker yellow, and I'm going to utilize this to color the center of the sunflowers and then the base of the petals. I'm only going about halfway across the petals so that it shades them. On top of citrine, then I brought in some grapefruit. This grapefruit color is adding a really nice orangey tone to the centers, and then I added shading to that using sherbet. Sherbet has a really nice deep orange, and that adds a nice bit of pop to that center. So the orange colors are focused on the center of the flowers, and then the yellows are what shaded the sunflower petals. Working on the edges of this frame, I'm going to color in the frame itself and also the leaves with some green. This happens to be Field. It's a really nice green. And as I ink blended, I created some lighter areas and then darker areas to get some shading. I didn't use a second color of green for that. This is all going to get put on top of a background, and I'm going to color this with 3 shades of blue, and these shades of blue actually are now available in cubes. So if you're an ink cube person instead of full-size pads, you can now get 12 more colors of Simon's Positively Saturated inks in the blue shades. And also the greens and yellows that I used earlier are also available too. They just came out last month. So I'm coloring this background with these blues, keeping a lighter area in the center just to have a highlight, and then we're going to add a stencil on top. This is an older stencil from Simon, but it's one of my absolute favorites. It's called Floating Leaves, and this is great for adding some texture. So we're going to do some tone-on-tone stenciling. It's a technique I really like using for a lot of my cards, and this is just going to allow me to ink blend those same colors of blue across the stencil on top of the ink blending we just did, and when I remove the stencil, you'll see we have those same colors now on top of the background, but in leaf form. So it looks really pretty, and this will add some interest behind our sunflowers. I did want to add a little bit of sparkle by splattering on some shimmer mist. This is from Brutus Monroe, and it adds just a really nice pearlized shimmer to your card. So once I splattered that on and let it dry, I flipped it over, and I have a piece of packaging here. This is plastic from one of my stamp sets. I just cut it down to be slightly larger than my A2 size card panel here, and I'm covering 4 sides of this paper with adhesive. But I'm going to remove the release paper on only 3 of those sides so that I can fold the plastic into the adhesive. Oscar, of course, had to participate. Somehow he always manages to know what I'm filming and has to walk across the desk at that point. So once I folded 3 of the sides into the adhesive, I'll trim off any excess on the corners, and we now have a pocket that can be filled with sequins. So I'm going to actually use new sequins from the Just a Note release. These are the Perfect Day sequin mix. I love the blue colors. It matches really well with the new blue ink cubes. Now, of course, like I said, I used full-size ink pads for my project today just because I'm a full-size ink pad kind of girl. But if you like cubes better, you're going to want to go check them out because these inks are amazing to stamp and ink blend with. I love them. They're the inks that I use most frequently. So I folded that last piece of plastic into that final edge of the adhesive to close the sequins in place, and we're ready to attach our beautiful sunflowers on top. The frame of this sunflower background is about 1/8 of an inch, so I'm actually going to use Simon Says Stamp's 1/8 inch Terrific tape on the edges of this. It's a really nice strong adhesive, but you could have used a liquid glue if you prefer. I just put that adhesive around all four sides of the frame and then attached that down onto my shaker. For a little bit of interest on the sunflowers, I did decide to add some foam tape there. That's going to pop them up off of the background just a little bit, and I think it adds some unique interest. So it gives them a little bit more depth and you get a nice shadow effect. So here's our shaker looking so pretty, especially with those sequins in there. And we're ready to go ahead and start adding a sentiment. So these are the Plant Sentiments stamp set from Simon's new Just a Note release. I'm going to stamp one of the greetings onto some black cardstock. So I've already prepped the surface with my Simon Says Stamp powder tool. I'm going to position my stamp onto my Misty, and then using Simon Says Stamp clear embossing ink, I'll stamp this down onto that black cardstock. My plan is to go ahead and emboss this with white embossing powder. So I'm using Simon Says Stamp Fine Detail White for that. I'll tap off any excess, and then using my heat tool, I'll go ahead and set this. I'm also using a Simon Says Stamp clothespin to hold the paper so I don't burn my fingers. There aren't any coordinating dies for this stamp set, but you could fussy cut the greetings or just cut this down into a simple little square or rectangle. I fussy cut it just for a little bit of interest, and then I used some foam tape to attach that down on top of my sunflowers. And that's it. This beautiful and fun shaker card is absolutely eye-popping. And what's fun is we got to color those sunflowers with our blending tools and inks. And because we used those detail blending brushes, we were able to maintain some really nice control and add some really cool shading effects to our sunflowers and leaves, which you couldn't do if you had larger brushes. So those detail brushes are definitely something I use quite frequently and are a really good staple to have. If you're interested in any of the products that I did use today, you can find them all in the video description below. I thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was inspiring. I hope you got some ideas on how you can use some of these new Just a Note release products from Simon Says Stamp, and I'll be back very soon to share more with you all. But until I see you again, I hope you have a wonderful day, and thanks for watching.